Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Virginia Morris. We are honoured to welcome Mr. Bharat Raj Pujul, Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Nepal, accompanied by His Excellency Mr. Kailash Raj Pokhrel, Ambassador, Embassy of Nepal to Australia, Commodore Pedro Clamar Fuick, Chief of Staff, Timor-Leste Defence Force, and their accompanying delegations, and Wing Commander Lance Halverson, retired, representing the Air Force Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please be seated if you can do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this National Memorial and Museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant Bernard Francis Cody. Bernard Cody was born on the 22nd of April 1921 in Boulder City, Western Australia, to Richard and Mabel Cody. Growing up, Bernard had 4 brothers: Richard, John, Leslie and Leonard, and a sister, May. His father worked as a miner and advocated for workers' rights before his death in 1937. Cody was an athletic young man, fond of sailing, tennis, cricket, handball and football. He attended the Christian Brothers colleges at Kalgoorlie and Fremantle and went on to University of Western Australia. He graduated in 1935, having passed his exams in history, English, geography, science, maths and physics. In 1939, he passed his intermediate accountancy exams. In December 1941, Cody enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force and served 9 months with the 11th Battalion. He was discharged in order to enlist with the Royal Australian Air Force in October 1942. Initially, as serving as a guard, he trained as an air gunner and was made sergeant in July 1943. In August, Cody became engaged to Pat Hackett. They had little time together as he embarked for the United Kingdom later that month. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27.5 RAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, air gunners and flight engineers who throughout the course of the war joined Royal Air Force squadrons or Australian squadrons based in Britain. For some months, Cody trained in England. On the 12th of April 1944, he was posted to the number 467 Squadron, RAAF. On the 9th to the 10th of May, 31 Lancaster bombers from numbers 463 and 467 Squadrons, RAAF, departed as part of a major RAF raid from Waddington, England. Their target was the heavily defended railway yards at Lille in France. Flight Sergeant Cody was the air gunner with Lancaster POJ. The raid cost the squadrons heavily. 12 Lancasters were lost and 50 airmen were recorded as casualties of the mission. Cody's aircraft failed to return to base and was later reported to have exploded above the target, killing all on board, including 4 Australians. Flying officers Harry Kraut and John Tucker, pilot officers Douglas Hislop and Flight Sergeant Kevin Waite, and British Sergeants George Bennett and Bertram Longhurst. Cody's remains were buried at a Neeps churchyard 7 kilometres east of Lille, where they lie today under the inscription, "Remembered Always." Bernard Cody was deeply missed by his family, friends and fiancée, who placed in memorial notices in the newspapers on the anniversary of his death. All 4 of his brothers served in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force in the Second World War. His younger brother Leonard was killed as a result of an accident in Australia, and though Leslie was made a prisoner of war in Thailand, he and the other 2 brothers, Richard and John, returned home safely. Flight Sergeant Bernard Cody's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant Bernard Francis Cody, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thoughts in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, we thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.